Hello, and thank you for joining us on ABC24 This Week. I am your host, Pepper Baker. It is our last show of the year, so you are in for a special holiday treat. So let's bring in our jolly panelists. You like that there? ABC24 political analyst Otis Sanford, of course, Susan Thorpe of Thorpe Communications, and Pastor Keith Norman of First Baptist Church.
I've slimmed down.
No longer a Santa, are you? All right, well, this is the last ABC24 This Week episode of 2025, so we are taking a look back at the biggest stories of the year. So after consulting with the panelists ahead of the show, it was decided that the biggest stories of the year are the Memphis Safe Task Force and the National Guard deployment, the Memphis Shelby County School Board terminating the former superintendent, and FedEx founder Fred Smith's passing and renaming the Memphis International Airport after him. So let's go back to the first one. The Memphis Safe Task Force operations officially began in late September, with the National Guard deployment following 2 weeks later. The federal occupation in Memphis followed the Trump administration's nationwide crackdown on violent crime that came after similar deployments in Los Angeles and D.C. White House officials, including Attorney General Pam Bondi and Secretary of Defense or War Pete Hegseth, visited Memphis alongside Governor Bill Lee. A few months into the operation now, as of today, the task force has made over 4,000 arrests, including 15 homicide suspects and more than 400, quote, known gang members. There's been nearly 700 illegal guns seized and more than 120 missing children found. Here's what the White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller and AG Bondi said during their visit to Memphis.
This isn't just a task force. This is a all-of-government unlimited support operation. And they're not going to be sitting behind a desk at a keyboard. We are sending in real cops with guns and badges to go out with you on the street.
This is long-term. We are going to work hand in hand to make the most violent crime city in the country have no crime.
So yeah, arguably the biggest story, at least making national headlines in Memphis. Otis, I'll have you start us off here. Just any takeaways or looking back now, what you have to say about the Memphis Safe Task Force.
Well, the prediction of no crime, I don't think we've reached that yet. We still have crime. That was just a bunch of platitudes there. But yes, that to me, that is the biggest story of the year, because it's what everybody has been talking about, certainly since September. But how it came about was a little ham-handed. The president made the announcement on television. The mayor, Paul Young, didn't know anything about it, even though the president said that the mayor wanted it, supported it. And then when he was asked by our Ezekiel Telemarco about that, he said, no, I didn't ask for this. He didn't want it. But he's had to play along. And so has the governor. The governor had to play along too, because he said the National Guard was not needed in Memphis. And then, of course, he had to change his tune on that. It is the biggest story. I think chasing all of the numbers, though, is a little kind of a red herring in my mind, because we don't know any information behind those numbers. And my bigger concern is how ICE and the Border Patrol have been mistreating immigrants in this community, including law-abiding ones.
Yes, and administrative arrest is what I think they were kind of quoting or coining the term for those immigration detentions. And that was kind of a word or a term people didn't quite understand.
And they made no distinction, though, between that, because they were calling them the worst of the worst. And the worst of the worst are not administrative detentions. I just think that they were lumping everybody in to make people think they were going after hardened criminals.
And Susan, you've mentioned a couple times on this show about the focus on the immigration detentions and who are these people and can we get the names and the stories behind them. Your takeaways of just what's happened since the task force.
Well, we still don't have many names, and unless reporters go out and try to get to the families of some of these people who have been arrested, and I don't know if they're in jail in Louisiana or they've been deported. We have no idea. But I think we have to, and the story is huge, but I think we have to separate ICE and the horrible way that they are manhandling people and snatching people out of their homes and on the streets, versus the Memphis Safe Task Force, which is the Memphis Police Force and several other law enforcement agencies, the Highway Patrol, et cetera. And they're working together. And what I understand is they are getting guns off the streets. They're finding the guns. Now, whether they found, you know, all the runaways or the missing children, we don't have names and faces on that either. But the gun issue has been such a huge issue in this community.
Yeah.
And I see some light in that. I was talking to an officer of the federal courts and asked them, this was over Thanksgiving, have you really seen any change? And I was told that the number of cases in the federal courts, October of this year over October of last year, had increased 90%. And November over November, 300%. And I said, is that all immigration? No, it's guns and arrests that where warrants were outstanding. You know, what gets me about the whole thing is the government is spending, the federal government is spending such a huge sum of money in our state government to capture these people. Why don't they give us the money to enhance our police department, to increase our numbers, and to modernize our department, and to train our department to do what all these foreign folks who are coming into town are doing? And it's complex, it's huge, but we have to always remember, let's separate ICE from what our Memphis police force is doing.
And Pastor Norman, there was kind of an unprecedented event here. We had never really seen how this was going to play out. A lot of questions when we first started reporting this of just like what this rollout was going to look like and who was going to be armed and who wasn't, all of that. So now that we are at this point, shed some light on just what we have come to see and known in what federal occupation looks like in Memphis.
Well, the federal occupation, and I take one point, it was Kash Patel who called us the worst city in America. And then the president picked up on it. But what we've seen is some things have improved. I will say that as you look at the highways, I don't see as many cars zooming and donuts turning in the middle of the street. That's one of the things that we were hopeful for. But again, this is from the Memphis Safe Task Force and not necessarily the ICE raids and all of the things that have been happening there. This, in my mind, although it's the biggest story of the year, remains an untold story because we don't know the real truths that this was intended to accomplish because we didn't have part of that conversation in the beginning and what the aims and the outcome would be. And the interjurisdictional agreements that are working together now should have always been in place. We should have always had Tennessee Highway Patrol, Sheriff's Department, and all of these organizations working to tamp down the gun violence and so forth. So what we see are great outcomes, but we don't know the real motivation behind it. And then the undefined period of time. This is going to go on how long? We keep hearing how long, how long? How much is it going to cost? How much are the lawsuits going to cost us? And then what will be the outcome that we can maintain and sustain once it goes away? These are unanswered questions.
That's an important point.
Very
but
much
if
so.
I could add to your narrative, you said that it was Kash Patel who called us the worst city. Would it be okay if I say that Kash Patel is the worst head of the FBI we've ever had, second only to Herbert Hoover?
Right.
So.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. When you cast that kind of disparity,
we take judicial notice of that.
Yeah.
Okay. I do want to turn our attention to, and we're probably going to go into a little bit of overtime here, but what was making rounds in the county, and that was switching to a story that dominated local headlines for months at the very beginning of the year, the Memphis Shelby County School Board terminating the superintendent. Well, the board took nearly 2 years, right, to find a superintendent just to fire the person they chose within a few months of filling the position. So let's look back here. After 2 nationwide searches, MSCS board picked Dr. Marie Fagans as the district superintendent. Fagans started on the job in April of 2024. During her brief leadership, she was criticized for job cuts, lack of communication, and personnel moves. But she also garnered major support from residents, MSCS teachers, principals, parents, and students. Well, on January 21st, the Memphis Shelby County School Board voted 6-3 in favor of terminating Fagans' contract, citing that Fagans violated district and board policies. Here's a look back at what Fagans and school board member Michelle McKissick, who voted against terminating Fagans, said to the media immediately after that vote.
I think this is exactly the opposite of what an educational institution stands for. I believe that many members of the board chose chaos over children, and it looks like they've chosen litigation over leadership.
This is so much bigger than Dr. Fagans. We are structurally broken, this board is. And to not realize this is going to impact potentially boards across the state.
Now, this has led to Fagan suing the MSCS board for getting her job back, as well as a $480,000 payout, while she's, not to mention, also running for Shelby County mayor. So, yeah, let's open this up really quickly. Just reactions from that story. It really made rounds. Pastor Norman, I'll have you kick this one off.
Yeah, this was something I disagreed with, the process and how it happened. Since we're talking about the board, I think we got to remember this is a board that had not even had orientation by the time they made this major decision. And so I wish we just could have pumped the brakes a little bit on this, put children first. Many of the things, and I want to quote this, and I can go on record, you can do the fact check, many of the things that Dr. Fagans was doing, whether we agree with them or not, were the blueprints of things that were already laid out by the time she got there. The discussion on closing down schools, we see some of those same schools being closed right now. And so we got to really go back and ask ourselves, did we just not like the process or the person or both?
Okay.
Well, I think, if I recall right, they didn't like the person. And we didn't hire her. Don't include me. I mean, the board didn't hire her because she wasn't warm, because she was warm and fuzzy. So, but what I find interesting is that she's using her firing as a springboard to run for the county mayor. How do you run for county mayor, want to represent the people that you're suing? I mean, none of it makes a lot of sense to me. I wish her luck.
Former Superintendent Fagans, created a lot of dissension while she was there. People who were offering goodwill to her to help her to be a successful superintendent, she pushed them aside, including people who could have been very helpful to her and, wanted to do things her own way. But I agree wholeheartedly with Susan here. How do you come to Memphis and be here less than 2 years and want to run the whole county? That to me does not wash very well. And I'm still dubious of her candidacy for mayor.
It's not going to be a good idea to think you can be county mayor and create your own sense of chaos as head of the county. So
what we see here, even nationally, your cabinet matters, but your kitchen cabinet matters more. The people who really inform you and advise you in the inner circle matter.
And she pushed them aside here.
Yeah, that story is going to keep on giving, I'm sure, in 2026. All right, when we come back, a Mid-South legend who transformed global packaging delivery passed away. We're going to get into how Memphis is going to honor his name next.